Is it turned on your pack?
It is turned on right now. Yeah, showing level.
Yes? Oh, maybe a little lower? A little lower? Testing? Yeah. Sounds good? Okay. All right, good evening, and thank you all for coming to my first lecture recital here at CU. It's wonderful to see all of you here, and it's definitely my great pleasure to share this music with you. This recital will be divided into two portions. The lecture part will be followed by the performance, and there will be a reception after the recital out in the lobby, and I would love for all of you to join me there. There will be sushi, as I promised. So. Okay? All right, so I guess just, let's get started, and as a way to launch into the discussion, I would like to pose the question, what do colors have to do with music? It is certainly not something that we as musicians talk about on a regular basis. However, the connection between music and colors can be traced to as early as the 1500s. Many artists and scholars have attempted to fuse the visual and oral elements together as one expressive force. And Alexander Scriabin was one such composer who explored this territory and achieved great success with his fifth symphony titled Prometheus, a Poem of Fire. The goal of my project is to decipher the color lighting component used in the Prometheus Symphony and apply it to the 8th Piano Sonata of Scriabin. And the performance portion of this recital will be a performance of Scriabin 8th Piano Sonata with color lighting. So for those of you who are not familiar with Scriabin and his music, he was a Russian composer who lived from 1872 to 1915. In the old Julian calendar, Scriabin was born on Christmas Day and died on Easter Sunday. And because many people, myself included, admire Scriabin greatly, this coincidence definitely made Scriabin into somewhat of a messiah figure. This is... his core output includes 10 piano sonatas, over 100 piano preludes and etudes combined, 1 piano concerto, and 5 symphonies. His early style is reminiscent of Chopin, while his late style borders atonality. The 8th Piano Sonata belongs to his late period, and we will explore some of the characteristics of Scriabin's late style later in the lecture. So when talking about Scriabin and colors, we must first talk about the neurological phenomenon known as synesthesia. In the simplest terms, synesthesia involves an overlap of senses. Individuals who experience synesthesia are known as synesthetes. Many different forms of synesthesia exist. The most common form is called grapheme and color synesthesia, where letters and numbers are shaded with a color. And this is how someone with grapheme color synesthesia might perceive these letters and numbers. The form of synesthesia that is of particular interest to us is sound and color synesthesia, where oral stimuli trigger a visual response in the form of colors. Scriabin devised a color lighting component for his Prometheus Symphony, and because of this, many people associate him with synesthesia. I must pause here and restate that synesthesia is an innate neurological condition, which means that the experiences are highly individual. And the same oral stimuli may trigger different color responses in different people. Scriabin did not believe in this, however. He believed that his system was universal. Scriabin said himself, "It cannot be personal. There must be a principle, must be oneness. A freak of chance is ripple on the surface, and the essential must be common." In addition, in correspondences with his friend Leonid Sabanev, Scriabin admitted that he arrived at his color scheme theoretically. Multiple revisions of his color system exist in his own handwriting. And this all suggests that his system was carefully worked out. But why is this important? The universal nature of Scriabin's color system, as intended by the composer, means that his color scheme must be followed as closely as possible in this application to the 8th Piano Sonata. Scriabin certainly was not the first, though, in history to associate colors with music. Sir Isaac Newton was one of the first to pioneer this idea in the 1700s. Newton's own color wheel stems from his famous experiment with light and glass prism. Newton discovered that sunlight is made up of all the colors in the rainbow. He achieved this by refracting sunlight through a glass prism, which I'm sure all of you probably learned in science class in elementary school. He then associated the 7 main colors in the spectrum to the 7 notes in the D Dorian scale. So if you look at here, this is Newton's color circle. Because he associated with the D Dorian scale, the starting point for the circle will be on the leftmost side where you see the D. So if you go clockwise, the notes we have is D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and back to D. So the colors in the rainbow are arranged in similar fashion. So we start with red, going clockwise, we end up with white. No one is completely certain why Newton chose the D Dorian scale. The most accepted theory is that Newton chose the D Dorian scale because of its symmetrical property. Newton must have seen a parallel between the scale and its color spectrum in their symmetrical properties. So what I mean by that, if we could draw an axis of symmetry, like a horizontal line across the circle, you can see that the top half and the bottom half mirror each other completely. However, Newton's color wheel had little practical value. It was never used in any sort of performance, musical or otherwise. It is unclear whether Scriabin was aware of Newton's efforts. But Newton's work became the inspiration for another scholar who took this idea to a more practical level. In 1725, Louis Bertrand Castel created one of the first instruments dedicated to the performance of color music. Castel was a French Jesuit monk, also a mathematician. He proposed the idea of the ocular harpsichord. The first ocular harpsichord consisted of a 6-foot square frame placed above a normal harpsichord. It contained 60 pieces of stained glass, each with a different color. When a key is struck, the appropriate shaft opens, allowing light to shine through the glass, projecting a particular color on the screen. An improved model emerged in 1754, which contained nearer than 500 candles as a lighting source, and you can imagine the amount of heat and smell that gave off. It probably wasn't very pleasant to perform on that instrument. Unfortunately, none of Castel's instruments or illustrations ever survived, so I can't show you what the ocular harpsichord looked like. Another idea that propelled Castel's endeavor was the notion that both sound and light are essentially waveform-based phenomena. Different wavelengths and frequencies of sound produce different pitches. Similarly, different frequencies and different wavelengths of light ray will produce different colors of light. Castel's ocular harpsichord quickly became a sensation. It attracted so much attention that the German composer Telemann actually traveled to France to see it for himself. Telemann played on the ocular harpsichord and even wrote several pieces for it, including a book on the instrument. Castel's association of color and music was very primitive and mechanical. Each note is associated with a particular color. The end result was an extremely active display of colors, a different color with each moving note. Scriabin was known to have come in contact with literature on Castel's ocular harpsichord. However, Scriabin rejected Castel's idea of a note-to-note association with colors. As we will see shortly, Scriabin's key color scheme was designed to reflect tonality and as well as extra musical ideas, instead of individual pitches. So in a sense, it is more subjective instead of objective. Another important source of Scriabin's inspiration was theosophy. Theosophy literally translates to divine wisdom. It refers to a system of speculations concerning this universe. It is a combination of religion, science, and philosophy. An important figure in theosophy who truly had an impact on Scriabin was Helena Blavatsky. Blavatsky founded the Theosophical Society in 1875, an organization that bears only distant resemblance to traditional theosophy. Unlike traditional theosophy, Blavatsky's teachings focus on the occult and the metaphysical. Scriabin was known to have read The Secret Doctrine, which was Blavatsky's magnum opus. There are two important ideas in theosophy that have direct correlation to Scriabin's key color scheme. The first is that sound and light are very much related, which was an idea that Castel also embraced for his ocular harpsichord. The second idea is a relationship between the 7 colors of the rainbow and the diatonic scale. In orthodox theosophy, the 7 main colors of the color spectrum are compared to the 7 notes in the diatonic scale. This could have had an influence on Scriabin's own key color scheme. Scriabin only incorporated color lighting in his last symphony, Prometheus, a Poem of Fire. So before we can design a color lighting component for the 8th piano sonata, we must thoroughly examine the key color scheme employed in Prometheus. Before we dive into the specifics, I will give you a brief background about the symphony. Prometheus was composed in 1910, only a few years before the 8th piano sonata. It is cast in single movement symphonic poem format. This symphony can be considered a quasi-piano concerto as well because of the extremely soloistic piano part. Scriabin also included a 4-part choir in the final minutes of the symphony. The symphony is meant to be a musical representation of the Greek god Prometheus, who brought fire to mankind. Scriabin's key color scheme is included with the score. As you can see in his system, each key is assigned a particular color. A very important feature of this key color scheme, and by extension Scriabin's late style, is that he does not distinguish between major and minor modes or among enharmonic equivalencies. So if you can see the chart, C flat and B share the same color, G flat and F sharp share the same color, and same thing with D flat and C sharp. The 12 keys in Scriabin's system are arranged in circle fifth, and that works both ways, obviously. So if you go clockwise, we have C, G, D, A, and so on and so forth. But we go counterclockwise, we go from C to F to B flat and flat. And this results in tritone relationships between keys on the opposite ends of the circle. So if you were to look at the topmost part of the circle, we have C, and the bottom is F sharp, which is tritonal part. Same thing if you look at A here, and on the other side, left side is E flat. So again, another tritonal relationship. Lastly, each key color combination has an extra musical description attached to it. So for example, G is called creative play, D is called joy, A is called matter, E is called dreams. And this is a modern interpretation of the 12 colors using Prometheus, according to the color names given by Scriabin. Prometheus, a Poem of Fire, shares many features with the 8th piano sonata. First of all, both are single movement works. Both works are in the key of A, according to the composer himself. And since both works belong to Scriabin's late period, they both use Scriabin's mystic chord as a fundamental building block. The mystic chord is also known as the Prometheus chord because of its extensive use in Prometheus. It contains 6 notes stacked in various types of fourths, and this is what it sounds like. And if we arrange notes in the most compact form, we can see that it resembles a whole tone scale, which is this example right here. The only difference is the A and the A flat. So the mystic chord in the most compact form is this. And as many of you know, a whole tone scale, the A will be the flat, which sounds like this. So it's very close to the whole tone scale. The mystic chord was conceived by Scriabin and became a staple of Scriabin's late style. It is used both harmonically and melodically in Scriabin's music. And in this respect, it can be seen as a precursor to Schoenberg's 12-tone technique. And you might ask why the mystic chord is so important in understanding the lighting component of Prometheus. It is crucial because a large part of the lighting sequence in Prometheus depends on the particular transposition of the mystic chord. The lighting part in Prometheus is written in standard musical notation. It sits at the top of the full orchestral chord as luce, which, so the part's actually called luce, which means light in Italian. Scriabin composed the luce part for a color organ that could project colors in the performance space. In modern performances of Prometheus, the luce part is usually done with modern lighting apparatus, much like here in Black Box. The luce part is written in two-voice texture. The upper voice corresponds to the root of the particular harmony, the particular transposition of the mystic chord. For example, the mystic chord starting on C will have C as the root, which I've already demonstrated. In this particular transposition, the root is C because C is on the bottom. If the upper voice of Luce begins on an A, which in this case I hope you can see the first note in the top voice of Luce is an A, that means the music at that point will be a mystic chord in an A transposition. So let's look at a real example. If we stack the notes of all the string instruments in the first measure, we get A, D sharp, G, C sharp, F sharp, and B, which is the A transposition of the mystic chord. So you can see how the string parts here complete the mystic chord in A transposition. In measure 13, the upper voice of the Luce moves down to an E flat. So in the same measure, the bassoon solo and the string section give us these notes: E flat, A, D flat, G, C, and F, which is the E flat transposition of the mystic chord. So up here, that's the bassoon solo. Again, the string section, they complete the mystic chord in E flat transposition. The lower voice of Luce moves much more slowly than the upper voice. For example, the opening F sharp in the lower voice of Luce lasts 86 measures. If we string all the notes in the lower Luce voice together, the longest notes in the series form a whole tone scale starting at F sharp. So these are all the notes in the lower Luce voice from Prometheus. The notes that occupy a substantial amount of measure are circled in red, as you can see. And these notes circled in red form a whole tone scale starting at F sharp. F sharp and C also occupy more measures than any other note in this whole tone scale, which also happen to be on the opposite ends of Scriabin's two color scheme. Bright blue and intense red are their respective colors. It is clear that these two colors form a center in the lower Luce voice. And finally, F sharp occupies 232 measures out of 606 measures in the lower Luce voice, forming a golden ratio. And for those of you who are not familiar with the golden ratio, two quantities are in the golden ratio if the ratio of the sum of the quantities to the larger quantity is equal to the ratio of the larger quantity to the smaller one. So in this graph, a golden ratio is formed because A plus B, the ratio of A plus B to A is the same ratio as A to B. Given the importance that Scriabin placed on F sharp and C in the lower Luce voice, the formation of the golden ratio must have been deliberate and not a coincidence. Numerous studies have been conducted on the lower part of Luce in Prometheus. None of these studies were able to reveal the true purpose of the lower Luce voice. Scholars and researchers have found no clear relationship between the lower Luce voice and actual music, as opposed to the upper voice of Luce. The lower voice also does not show any clear interaction with the upper voice. One particular researcher, however, suggested that the lower Luce voice in Prometheus loosely coincides with the structure of the piece. For example, changes in the lower Luce voice line up with the ending of the second theme section of the exposition, as well as the beginning of the development section. So how is the Luce part utilized in a modern performance? We'll go back here and look at the beginning of Prometheus. The notes in the Luce part at the beginning are F sharp and A, as we have already seen. This means that these two colors, well, first of all, okay, F sharp is blue and A is green. So that means at the very beginning, these two colors will be projected into the performance space. In measure 13, which is right here, the upper Luce voice goes down to an E flat, which means that the green color associated with A will change to a pink or flesh color that's associated with E flat. So now we have a firm understanding of the lighting component in Prometheus. We will now look at Scriabin's Piano Sonata number 8 before attempting to add visual elements to the performance of this work. The 8th Piano Sonata of Scriabin was composed in 1912 and 1913, along with Sonatas number 9 and 10. Chronologically, this sonata is also the last that was completed. Scriabin has spent a considerable amount of time composing the piece. He did not work on this piece for a period of time and returned and finished it in the summer of 1913, after he had already completed Sonata number 9 and 10. Scriabin claimed that this is his most difficult work for the piano, and he never performed it himself. And now we'll talk about this 8th sonata on 3 levels, and these are thematic, harmonic, and structural. There have been disagreements among scholars regarding the analysis of the thematic material in the sonata. according to Leonid Sebeniev, Scriabin's close friend and biographer, the themes in this sonata represent the 5 elements, which are earth, water, fire, air, and the mystic ether. The idea of the elements is even more plausible if we go back to theosophy. In theosophical teachings, 7 elements are believed to exist in the known universe. 4 of the 7 elements are earth, water, fire, and air, which theosophists refer to as elements of primary creation. These 4 elements are considered to be entirely physical, while the 5th element, ether, is considered semi-material. Neither Sebeniev nor Scriabin has shown the actual thematic material linked to these elements. So the job of finding these links have been left up to researchers and musicians. And I have come up with the following as the 5 themes. The earth theme is stated in the opening measures in the right hand. It sounds like this. And to me, the full and grinding quality of the chords is very fitting for the earth theme. Occasionally, Scriabin would not use the chordal form of the earth theme, but instead use only the top notes in these chords, which I will show you shortly. And these are just 2 more examples of how the theme is used throughout the piece. So the first example is from measure 101 to 103, which is more or less a direct transposition of what you just heard. The second example is taken from much later in the piece, and this is where he only used the top voice of the earth theme. The next theme is water, which is also found in the first 3 measures of the sonata, in the left hand. The theme itself here is in the top voice, and the notes are B, C sharp, B, C sharp, which are here, 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 and here. And this is what it sounds like, just the top voice. Scriabin had used this ascending and descending whole step motion to describe water as early as the 2nd piano sonata. And this is the beginning of the 2nd movement of the 2nd piano sonata. This sonata was inspired by the Black Sea, and the same alternating whole step motion can be seen in the left hand here in the form of octave, and it sounds like this. So, same alternating whole step motion used in the sonata. Now going back to the water theme in the 8th sonata, Scriabin fully develops the water theme in the exposition. The most evocative form of the water theme is this right here. And this is what it sounds like. The whole step motion is in the top voice here, in this case, in the chords. And the left-hand figure here really evokes the movement of water, I think. The next theme is the fire theme, which is this ascending arpeggiated figure in measure 4. Again, this figure is also consistent with other figurations that Scriabin had used to describe fire and flight. The best example is Scriabin's Vers la Flamme, which translates to toward the flame. At the end of Vers la Flamme, Scriabin uses this long arpeggio to signify the flight toward the flame. So this is the very last measures of Vers la Flamme. You can see this arpeggio extending from all the way to the right in the bottom staff to the top of the top staff near the end, and I'll play this for you as well. And now, just to show you the similarity between this figure and the fire theme from the 8th sonata, I'll play these back to back so you can hear the similarities. And now the fire theme from the 8th sonata. Extremely similar. Next, we move on to the air theme. The air theme shows up at the beginning, not in its entirety, but only as a chordal fragment. And that's the example to the left. The fragment is first heard in measure 5 and sounds like this. The full theme is used to open the exposition, which is this example right here. So you can see the two chords from over here are used exactly the same fashion here, but with an added figuration here. So the full developed air theme sounds like this. Oops. So as you can hear, it's very easy to hear how the cascading fourth figure mimics the mobility and lightness of air. The air theme is also extremely audible throughout the entire work, so you will be able to pick it out easily during the performance. The final theme, which is also the most important theme, is the ether theme. If the short melody that is first heard in measure 3, the most important feature of the ether theme is the fact that it's the mystic chord. The first statement of the ether theme, which is here, contains the same notes as the A transposition of the mystic chord, except the root A, which is missing from here. And Scriabin called this melody the most tragic episode of my creative work. Scriabin would often demonstrate this figure by emphasizing the descending half step from the B to the B flat. And Scriabin would say, "See how I bring mood within the one phrase. Listen to the tragedy born out of such dissolution. In 2 notes, I alter hope into despair." And this is what the ether theme sounds like. And here's another example of the ether theme in the development section. The ether theme is in the right hand, starting the first full measure. So it actually starts right here on D. This example also shows Scriabin's use of counterpoint. In the second full measure, which is right here, if you look carefully, the arpeggio in the top voice is actually the fire theme. So, so this is what this excerpt sounds like. I'll start from the first full. I'll start from the very beginning. There. I'll play this again. I'll play the theme separately so you can hear how they interact. So the ether theme by itself is this. The fire theme on top of it is this. Together they sound like this. And my personal favorite example of the ether theme is actually in the closing measure of the sonata. Scriabin only uses half of the original ether theme here. If you remember, the original ether theme is this. In this example, Scriabin only uses the second half of that theme, starting on B natural, which is this. So he completely omitted the first half. The note values, as you can see here, have also been elongated, and I'll play this example starting from the third measure. So that's my personal favorite of the ether theme. So let's go back to the opening page of the sonata. This example here shows all the 5 themes within the first 5 measures. So Scriabin was extremely economical with how he introduced the themes. I will play the first 5 measures just so you can hear how all 5 themes work together at the very beginning. Given the complexity of the sonata, knowing these 5 themes should give your ears something to latch onto to make this piece less daunting on the first hearing, which I'm sure is the case for many of you. Next, we'll talk about harmonic structure in this particular sonata, before we can construct the upper Luce voice for this piece. And just to refresh everyone's memory, the upper voice of Luce in Prometheus reflects the root of the harmony. Like we have seen already, the ether theme is the mystic chord. However, the mystic chord is not the most fundamental device in the sonata. Harmonic centers in the 8th piano sonata are conveyed primarily through the use of dominant 7th chords. We're faced with an interesting problem because dominant 7th chords in the sonata never resolve to tonic tonalities like in traditional harmony. Let's look at the opening chords, for example. The first chord of the sonata is essentially a dominant 7th chord built on C. We have the root, which is here, the 3rd, the 5th, and the minor 7th, which completes the dominant 7th chords on C. Scriabin, though, is very creative at masking the dominant quality of these chords. First of all, he modified the distance between the chord tones. So a dominant 7th chord, dominant 7th chord on C is something we're all familiar with, something like this. But if we were to just look at the root, the 3rd and the 5th, and the minor 7th, the way he arranged them is this. The root, 3rd, 5th, and minor 7th up here. So already in that particular arrangement, it already starts to sound less like a C7 chord that we're used to. Next, he also likes to add major 7th from the root. So having both major and minor 7th in the chord really blurs the quality of dominant 7th chords. Lastly, various types of ninth are added for extra flavor. And in this case, he has augmented ninth, which is D sharp or Boulder. So we went from something that we're all familiar with, which is this, to here. So we're faced with two choices here. Do we consider the C7 chord's function as a dominant to F or as a tonic itself? According to Fabian Bauer, who is perhaps the most important Scriabin biographer, 7th chords in this period of Scriabin's output are treated as new tonics and tonalities. In this case, the opening chords of the 8th sonata, the C7 chord represents a tonal center of C, and the next chord is an A7 chord, which also this principle applies to. This table shows all the harmonic changes in the 8th piano sonata. And as you can, I'm not sure you can scan through all of them, but this sonata actually used all 12 keys at some point. Of particular interest in this table is a movement of minor thirds, which you can see in the middle section, B flat to C sharp to E and G, and then back to E and G. This minor third is also prevalent in Prometheus. Kenneth Peacock, who is an expert on the Prometheus symphony, revealed that the Prometheus chord, or mystic chord, in two different transpositions that are minor third apart, yield the least amount of common tones. According to Peacock, the interval of a minor third is a way for Scriabin to generate harmonic activity and to avoid harmonic stasis. To quote Peacock, clearly this system of common tone modulation allowed Scriabin to achieve maximum variety within the compositional limits he had set for himself in Prometheus. It also provided a unique harmonic language and the means for structural organization. Next, we will dive into the structure of the sonata. As I mentioned before, the lower Luce voice in Prometheus loosely follows the structure of the piece. So in order to construct a lower Luce voice for the 8th piano sonata, we must also look at the structure of this work. Despite the fact that Scriabin has abandoned traditional harmony by this point in his career, he still retained an affinity with the traditional sonata form. The 8th piano sonata is comprised of 5 main sections. It begins with a slow introduction, followed by the exposition. And the development section is very interesting because it's actually a double development. The material in the first development is used again in the second, transpose the minor third up. And the recapitulation is almost identical to the exposition, except that the recapitulation is a major third higher than the exposition. Introducing the recapitulation in a new key is also seen in Prometheus, where the recapitulation is a major third below the exposition. And the whole sonata concludes with a fast coda. The first row in this chart represents the number of measures each section occupies. It's easy to see that the development section weighs almost as much, actually more, just a little over than the exposition and recapitulation section combined. The three middle sections are symmetrical around the development section, but the symmetry is broken when we add in the introduction and the coda section because those two do not have the same amount of measures. However, if we look at the second row, which represents the average performance time for each section, we can see that the introduction section, which is marked lento, takes almost about the same, has around the same duration as a coda, which is marked vivo. So Scriabin achieved a perfect symmetry with the form of the sonata, not with the number of measures, but with the duration of each section, which is extremely creative. So with the information we have gained so far in our analysis, we can now come up with a logical plan for lighting design. First, let's talk about the upper Luce voice. Since the upper Luce voice represents the root of the harmonies, the table of harmonies I provided earlier will form the basis for the upper Luce voice. However, because of technical limitations, many fast-moving harmonic changes have been eliminated from the upper Luce voice for this particular performance. The lower Luce voice is more problematic because the logic behind its use in Prometheus is still a mystery. My design of the lower Luce voice for the 8th piano sonata will follow these 5 principles observed in Prometheus. First, the lower Luce voice will outline a whole tone scale. Second, the whole tone scale will start and end on F sharp, because Prometheus and 8th piano sonata share the key of A, and the lower Luce voice in Prometheus starts on F sharp. The third principle is that F sharp and C will occupy the most number of measures as seen in Prometheus. Next, the number of measures in F sharp should form the golden ratio with the entire piece. Lastly, the lower Luce voice should mirror the structure of the work to a certain degree. And this is what I came up with for the lower Luce voice for the 8th piano sonata. So this particular arrangement adheres to all 5 principles stated above. F sharp and C occupy the majority of the piece. F sharp also forms a golden ratio with the entire piece. F sharp, which see at the beginning and the end, occupy a total of 199 measures against a total of 499. It also closely matches the structure of the piece. The first F sharp section covers the introduction section and a large amount of the exposition. The section corresponding to C, which is in the middle of the chart here, covers the entire development. And the final F sharp covers part of the recapitulation and the coda. Emphasis must be placed on the goal of this realization, which is not to speculate what Scriabin would have done, but rather devise a system that makes sense musically, following principles set forth by Scriabin. And this concludes the lecture part of this recital. And I hope we provided a new perspective on Scriabin's music and his creative process. So please save your questions until after the performance, and we'll take a brief intermission, and we will be underway with the performance section pretty soon. Thank you.
The Grim Reaper, isn't he? Or is he
this stuff together. First of all, Gary. This show would not have happened without Gary's help and his crew. Secondly, I want to thank all my friends, and especially Tick, who's up there, who has an extremely difficult job of being the liaison between the music and the lighting crew. So a big round of applause. Thank all my committee members, most of them who are here, Dr. Miller, Dr. Drumheller, Dr. Neely, and Dr. Cooperstock. Especially Dr. Cooperstock, because he's also my piano teacher, and I just want to thank him for being such a wonderful mentor and teacher. So. I need to mention that my parents drove all the way from Iowa today in one day. I know this is cliche, we all say we have the best parents ever, but I just want to thank my parents for always supporting me for all my endeavors. So I don't know where my dad went, but my mom's right there. And the floor is open for questions.
What are the remaining two elements in the theosophical scheme?
You know, it's in there somewhere, but I didn't write it down, so I don't. There was something really obscure that didn't stay.
Okay.
First of all, congratulations on an excellent presentation and performance. I have two questions. The first is, did you feel that, because obviously you've done all of the analytical work to understand the harmony, and you play with so much color as it is, do you feel that the added lighting enhanced your performance?
Most definitely. Most definitely.
In what ways?
Of course, we use color in music as what you described, tone color, but I think color is, visually definitely. I think you can just feel the music as a whole better, because there's your one more sense is engaged with your visual sense as well as your oral.
So that leads perfectly into my second question, which is that Scriabin postulated that there was supposed to be one, set of colors for each harmony, independently of whether or not you were synesthete or what your own perceptions of the colors were. Is the color scheme one that you would identify with, or are there times that you might have changed it?
I think there are parts I might have changed it, but then again, because it's Scriabin's piece and he used another piece, I felt the need to follow exactly the same. Yeah.
Thank you.
Alex.
Yes.
What's his name? That's good.
So there were two colors happening all the time.
Yes.
What,
two voices.
Was the experience for us supposed to be the combined result of two colors?
Yeah, I should explain that actually. So what we did is, there are 6 lights in the center, and the center lights, which were the ones that changed more frequently, was the one that was in harmony. And the roller ones, which were extremely noisy, those were the lower DJ boards that moved way slower.
Okay. So our perception should have been of the combined mix of colors.
You actually should be able to see two distinct. It shouldn't blend that much. Right?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you so much for just a fantastic performance in the crew, which is amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think of the idea that color is kind of a sense perception that more or less we can almost all agree on? If something is yellow, we're going to see it. I mean, that's why traffic lights work.
Right.
But key and transmission is something that's a much more sort of difficult thing to narrow down. I mean, as Elizabeth Marvin's research and many others have shown, we all mostly have some sense of perfect pitch.
Right.
There's a kind of continuum. But it's curious to me that Scriabin thought these two were so linked, and yet one is so patently more subjective, and the other is much more subjective. So where do you draw the line here?
I'm not sure I completely understand your question.
Well, I mean, hearing the transpositions of chords, be it the Prometheus chord or the Dominant Seventh chord, which you say is the basis of your chord. that's something that's rather difficult for us to agree on because we don't all have perfect pitch.
Right, right.
But seeing the colors is something very different. We can all say that that's yellow or that's pink or that's red.
Right.
So it seems to me Scriabin has kind of a problem here.
He does, yeah. And because, like you said, you may not agree on the same color for the same notes. But again, because Scriabin said, my system is the way. As far as his music is concerned, so.
Well, whatever the connection is, it makes for a great show.
That's what I give you guys a good show, Courtney.
I'm just wondering what the strobe lights were emphasizing.
They would just add a free effect.
Okay.
That was my choice.
What was about this road?
I had a question about the Prometheus. Was there ever any research that you found that linked the lower Luce voice perhaps to a more programmatic aspect to the Prometheus myth?
Actually, not so much to the Prometheus myth, but more along the line of theosophical ideas of human evolution or the ascension of the soul and stuff like that. Okay. Yeah, but there's definitely at least some people have speculated there a connection to theosophy, but it's nothing's concrete. Corey.
Is it I don't know, I was wondering if it was maybe Scriabin with the way that he was combining the sound and the different thematic material, if maybe he was trying to achieve some sort of metaphysical effect.
Well, there was one thing that I did mention in my lecture because I didn't want to make it too long, but this just could be a long shot. But the two main harmonies in the piece are actually A and E flat. The beginning, the introduction is almost completely in A, and when we hit the exposition, it's E flat. And back at his key color scheme, A is associated with matter, and E flat is mankind. And if you go back to theosophy, they were saying, the 5 elements are what mankind are made of. So does that mean this piece is more about, how mankind are made? That's just my, call me crazy. Yeah.
That's about that. You played this piece a lot, and Scriabin never played it for public.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask you, how do you feel in yourself about what he said about the big tragedy of his life is that the mystic scale, the way he broke it up, turned hope into desolation and despair. And actually ether is that which holds everything together. So how do you feel when you play the piece?
Well, that's how do I feel? I definitely feel the tragedy in the piece. I mean, there are a couple sections where it's actually marked tragique. But again, that does not necessarily mean tragic, translated. But the element of tragedy is definitely there. And the thing he said about turning hope into despair is really just about that half-step motion in the ether theme from the B to the B flat.
But the way it ended, which was also that mystic, didn't you feel it had hope? I mean, didn't you feel?
Well, where I feel hope was actually the final chord, which is again, it's dominant 7th chord built on A. That's how the piece ends. It just sort of fades away. It doesn't resolve anywhere. So in a sense, I would say, yeah, by the end, the end becomes definitely there's hope. Yeah, especially the tempo, the figurations, how it just gets faster and faster and faster. That I definitely feel some just sort of flying off into space. Yeah. Anybody else? My community members are all happy. I forgot. Sorry, I have to thank Ira Liz right here. I totally forgot. He's the one who made my poster and took all my pictures. So thank you, Ira.
I'm just curious, because you were hidden behind the screen, did you have the piece memorized?
Yeah.
So there was no sheet music?
No sheet music.
Oh.
I was thinking about it. No, let's do it. Yeah, big boys way. Anybody else? All good? Ready for some things? Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking that as